Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Chronic Chronicles, the podcast where we dive deep into life with chronic illness, sharing real stories, science backed insights, and practical tips for thriving with long term conditions. Today's episode is a really powerful one. I'm joined by Chloe, who lives with endometriosis, ADHD, POTS, and BPD. Chloe's journey is one of resilience, where she balances the complexities of multiple diagnoses while also advocating for her health and well-being online. In our conversation, we talk about everything from navigating the medical system to managing mental health and finding coping strategies that actually work. Whether you have a similar experience or you just want to understand what life is like living with these chronic conditions, this episode is packed with a lot of insights and inspiration. This episode is brought to you by Octavia Wellness, a game changer for managing pelvic pain and endometriosis flares. If you're like me and you struggle with debilitating cramps, intense pelvic discomfort, or stubborn muscle tension, Octavia CBD suppositories might just be the relief that you're searching for. So, what exactly are CBD suppositories? They're small, capsule-shaped treatments designed to be inserted vaginally or rectally, delivering targeted relief directly to the pelvic region. Unlike oral CBD, suppositories bypass the digestive system, allowing the active ingredients to absorb faster and more effectively where you need them most. Octavia's carefully formulated suppositories combine broad-spectrum CBD with soothing ingredients to help relax pelvic muscles and reduce tension, calm inflammation that fuels endo flares and period pain, and ease discomfort from painful sex, post-surgical soreness, or IBS-related cramping. I personally keep Octavia on hand for those really tough days when my usual methods just aren't enough, and it's been a really big game changer. If you want to give them a try, you can head over to heyoctavia.com and use code CHRONICLES for a special discount at checkout. Because when you're managing chronic pain, finding relief shouldn't feel impossible.
Hi, I'm Chloe. I am on social medias as Endometriosis Chloe. I'm 27 and I'm from Lancashire in the UK. I have a few different chronic illnesses. Some are still suspected, some are diagnosed. But yeah, we're just gonna have a chat and we'll discuss them and debunk them all.
Beautiful. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I've followed your social media for a while now, and um, I'm just so excited. I feel like there are so many. I follow a lot of like UK and Australia women that have endometriosis, and I'm like, do you have more of it there? I don't think so, but there's like more social media people from the UK and from Australia.
Yeah, I feel like social media is quite big here. I feel like Americans like maybe you just have more things to do and we don't because we always have terrible weather, so we just sit inside on our phones all day. So maybe that's why. But now that you say that, I actually follow so many American like endometriosis and chronic illness.
Weird.
So maybe it's weird, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I even with the podcast, I think you're the like fourth or fifth person I've had from the UK on the
Oh,
podcast. Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah. And I've had two from Australia and one from New Zealand. So I'm like, we're all over the place. The
we're all
community is
over the
all
place.
over. Yeah. So I guess I'll ask you a little bit more about your social media really quick. So when did you start endometriosis, Chloe?
We're actually coming up to a year anniversary. So
Oh,
I started on the 5th of November last
okay.
year. And that was after my first surgery. And I was really going through it. And I had no person in my real life to actually talk to who understood it. Like people were
Mhm.
obviously supportive, but no one had been through it. So I was looking online and looking at different accounts. And I followed Emma, endometriosis.
Mhm.
I followed her for quite a while. And I was just looking, I was thinking, do you know what? Like, this looks like something I could do. Like, I'm obviously going to be stuck with this chronic illness now for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And there's going to be good days and bad days, but like, I kind of just wanted to create like a digital diary for myself. And I think that's why I first raised it. It wasn't so much to raise awareness, it was literally just for me to have something to look back at and
Yeah.
basically just like watch the whole endometriosis journey unfold before my eyes, kind
Hmm.
of thing, and look back at it over years to come and see how far I've come, like since the very first surgery and things. So I started off just doing that. But obviously, I did want to raise awareness at the same time,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like a main priority. It was more so just for myself. And and then I just started kind of posting. I think I started posting like memes, like funny videos, and things, just because I saw a few and I was like, oh, these are so funny. Like I want to kind of spread this humor around and lighten up the mood a little bit. So I started to post things like that. And I think one of them went viral, and then suddenly my Instagram just kind of took off.
Yeah.
It was very unexpected. I think overnight I gained like nearly 2,000 followers overnight. I
Wow.
woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, like what has happened? It was, yeah. So, and yeah, and then I think I just kind of, I thought, right, okay, well, this is what people are liking. And the main thing that made me carry on doing it is because I was getting so many messages from so many people saying, I'm going through this as well. Like, have you got any advice or any tips? And I was trying
Hmm.
to just communicate and help as many people as I could that way. And then I think that made me kind of want to really start to post more and actually raise awareness, because then it was the best feeling ever when those people would come back to me in like a few months' time and say, by the way, I did what you told me to do, like with my doctor, and it worked, and I've got my diagnosis
Yeah.
surgery. And it's genuinely the best feeling on earth getting a message like that and knowing that you'd helped that person to go through that process.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's when I just kind of thought, right, you know what, like I'm going to start taking this a lot more seriously now, and I'm going to help as many people as I can. And even, I mean, now obviously I don't know about yourself, but sometimes it can be hard to get back to messages, especially with
Yeah.
ADHD and things like that. And I do tend to, I'll read a message and think, oh, I'll come back to it, and then it's gone out of my mind, and I always feel so guilty, and I do get very overwhelmed. I've got anxiety and things, so I do get very overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Um, I'll try and get back to as many as I can. But if I can't, then I mean, I've created that like chat channel now, so I kind of can post things in
Yeah.
here, so loads of people can see that and reply if they want to and things like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely been hard along the way, and you do get a lot of hate as well. I will say that. I've had some very nasty things said to me, but the the good outweighs the bad, definitely at times. So yeah, and I love the online community that we have. I absolutely adore it, and the brands I've got to work through as well through doing it are just incredible. So yeah, and I've made so many friends as well, which is great.
I know. It's super rewarding too, and then you also just feel like you can get on there and you can talk about like everything that's going on so openly because everyone understands. Like they get it. They've been
It's
through it. They understand what's going on.
Yeah, like on my personal Instagram, there is no way on earth I will be showing on my personal Instagram, oh guys, I came on my period today, I'm really struggling. And it's like there's just no way everyone in my actual real life wants to see that stuff. So to
Yeah.
have that space to just freely, literally just speak your mind, tell everyone what's going on,
Hmm.
and relate to people and chat to people about it, and people understand, it's the best thing I've ever done, to be fair. Because I think without it, I would be in a very lonely place. Not because I've not got support, but just because I've not got support from people who genuinely do understand and go through it themselves.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be able to just like talk openly about it. Like that helps me so much just being able to go on there and be like, like this is what's going on with me today. Or even ask like I've had like really bad frequent urination recently. Like I'm waking up in the night. It's been going on for probably the last year, but like really ramping up in the last 6 months. And I can go on there and I can put on my story like anyone else with endo deal with this. And then I'm like, oh, okay, like this is I quote unquote like normal, unfortunately.
Normal for us.
Yeah, normal for us. And then I'm like, okay, I feel better. Like at least I'm not, dying. Like something isn't really crazy happening.
Yeah,
But that's so nice too, because then you can just go on there and you can be like, oh, okay, like other people are going through similar
yeah,
things. And then I've also found like a slew of symptoms that I didn't realize could be related to like some of the chronic illnesses that I have. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like
yeah.
you can
That
have
happened to
leg
me a lot
pain.
too.
Yeah. Like,
Especially that happened with me with my leg pain. And I think the first person I saw about was Emma talking about it. I had no idea that the leg pain was it could be like to do with endometriosis.
yeah.
And then when I saw that, and obviously then you do like a deep dive into researching it, and I was like, oh my, it was like a light bulb just went like on in my brain. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, it makes
Because
so much
these
sense.
are things that like I go to my doctor about and I'm like, hey, I'm having all these other symptoms. Like, what are these? And they're like, I don't know, like whatever. I could be a lot of
Yeah.
things. And then I go on my community and people are like, oh yeah, these are things that I'm dealing with too. And I'm like, oh. And then there
Yeah,
is research for it. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, why does my doctor not know
exactly.
that? Like,
I genuinely think that I've learned more from social media than I have through any doctor ever.
yeah.
Like the
Hmm.
things I've learned about my body that's obviously I know that someone online, probably some doctor, some probably very good endometriosis specialist has
Hmm.
probably said this can be caused through this.
Yeah.
Um, for us to obviously know that online, but
Yeah.
my usual doctor did not believe me about my symptoms for 12 years. So whereas
Yeah.
everyone online is almost like I feel like I knew my diagnosis before I got my diagnosis. And I think that's the same for a lot of people. But you
Hmm.
still have that invalidation of, but I'm not actually diagnosed and I don't know if it is that. And then I start thinking, what if I'm saying I've got endometriosis when it's completely different? It's not that at all. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I mean, let's be honest, 9 times out of 10, when you're having those symptoms, it usually is that route, even if doctors
Hmm.
sometimes and surgeries and things, which I do get a lot of people saying to me, like, oh, I've had the laparoscopy, but they didn't find anything. And I'm like, but did they check everywhere? Because it's
Yeah.
so easy to get missed.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. But yeah, definitely
Yeah.
like endometriosis community online is the best thing ever to go like to be a part of because we do really help each other, to be fair.
Hmm. Hmm. I know. I 1000% agree. And I have a friend that got the surgery, was told she didn't have endometriosis, and then went back and looked at, like, requested her medical records like a couple years later. And in the medical records, it said that they did find like they found endometriosis. But the doctor, like, just was like, oh, it's just not. Like, for some reason he like didn't say, like, think it was, but like it literally said that that's what was found in whatever
Mad.
portion. I know. And I'm like, what? So she was like, yeah. So I, and then went back and so that was like, I think that was from an ablation. And then she went back like a couple of years later after she got her medical records and got an excision from a specialist, and she had stage 3 endo. Like, it was all over. And I'm like, what the fuck? So imagine fighting for this diagnosis, fighting for this original surgery, going in and being like, oh shit, like I was wrong. I don't have endo. And then you're still for like 4 years being like, what the fuck's going on? Like, I'm in so much pain. And then you've come to find out that you had it all along. Like,
The mental toll that must have on her as
I
well.
know, I
Like
know. I felt awful.
that's that is horrendous. And to be fair, it happens to so many people and it's so wrong. Like I don't
Hmm.
understand how doctors can get away with doing that. It frustrates me so much. But sadly, I mean, I've known people that it's happened to as well. Maybe not as such as years, but
Yeah.
definitely like they've seen it. I think one of my other friends, I'm sure she said a bit ago that she actually took her surgery pictures to a different specialist. I don't know if it was a few months or a few years later, and said like, "Can I just ask what are these
Yeah.
like things on
Spots and
whatever it
stuff.
was?
Mhm.
Yeah, like what's this piece of tissues and things like that?" And they said, "Oh, that's endometriosis." And she said, "But the previous doctor said it wasn't endometriosis. So
Yeah.
is it not like?" And it's
Hmm.
so bizarre that she even I mean she's not a medical professional. She doesn't work in any kind of healthcare role, and she knew
Yeah.
herself that what she saw was not normal, but yet the doctor said it was.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
I know. I 1000% agree. I want to ask you a little bit about your journey with your well, one, your mental health stuff, but also all of your diagnoses. So, like a lot of people, me included, you have quite a few diagnoses. So what did you get diagnosed with first?
Um, so when I was very young,
Hmm.
in 2014, I started having heart palpitations, like passing out episodes, and obviously. anything to do with your heart, I was panicking. And obviously, I kept
Hmm.
having like blackout episodes and things like that. So I got taken to hospital quite a lot for those symptoms I was having.
Yeah.
Um, I had no idea what it was. And then I got told that basically I had to have like loads of scans and things. And I got told that I had a small little hole in my heart. So that was the first thing I got diagnosed with, which is it's known as a PFO. Don't know
Okay.
how to actually say it. It's like patent forming ovale, something like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
But it's basically like a little hole that doesn't close up at birth. Some
Hmm.
people go the lives without even knowing it, like knowing that they have that, but other people it can cause complications for, which sadly I was in that group. And then in 2015, was it 2015? Yeah, 2015, I was in college and I had one of these episodes again. Um, but this time it was very much so like I physically couldn't move. Like I couldn't speak. My speech was slurred. Like I couldn't move my legs or anything. My legs and arms were just weights. And that only lasted a matter of seconds, to be fair. And then I got up and I walked out with like my class, and then I just like collapsed on the floor outside, and I got taken to hospital, and I got treated for a minor stroke, which they thought,
Whoa.
yeah, they thought, so basically they thought a clot had got through the hole in my heart and gone to my
Hmm.
brain.
Hmm.
So on my records, I mean, it's called a TIA, and on my records it says treated for a TIA. So we
Yeah.
don't actually know whether it fully was or not. Like even today, I still don't know. But that's because I had to have like scans of my brain and everything, but I had braces at the time, so obviously metal in there in an MRI scan, it's just yeah.
Yeah.
So and then following on from that, I was still having loads of problems with my heart and everything. So they thought, right, we need to do some more investigations. And then in 2016, I got diagnosed with POTS, which I think I didn't know this at the time, obviously, because I was very young and I didn't even know what POTS was at that point. But
Yeah.
I know now that a lot of people with endometriosis also have POTS.
Hmm.
So when I was having obviously I was having all my endo symptoms anyway back then, but obviously I didn't realize it could be linked in any way at all. So yeah, so I got diagnosed with POTS, and that was very hard to navigate at first because I had to have a loop recorder, if you know what that is. So it's basically like a
Hmm.
little USB stick that they put underneath the skin over the heart, and it monitors the heart for usually around 3 years until you need to get it taken out.
Okay.
Like multiple ones that are like just a stick on, take home for a week kind of ones. But because my heart rate was so unpredictable, we didn't know when I was going to have an episode. So I had that for 3 years, and that did come back saying that sometimes my heart rate was going over 200 beats per minute whilst I was literally asleep in bed at night, which obviously is very dangerous. So yeah, and then I got diagnosed with POTS, and that was in 2016. And then I got put on medication, told some different exercise like take electrolytes and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I wasn't actually diagnosed with anything for a while after that. I just kind of thought everything's just my POTS. Like if I was feeling fatigued and things, I just kind of thought it must just be my POTS. But obviously, I was still having endometriosis symptoms at this point,
Yeah.
which obviously I didn't know was endometriosis. I had never heard of it before. I
Right.
just thought I was unlucky and I was experiencing very painful periods, heavy bleeding.
Yeah.
But obviously, going to the doctors, I was told it was all normal. It's just puberty. It's what every girl goes through. Periods are meant to be uncomfortable. And I was thinking, this is
Hmm.
not comfortable. This is like, I feel like I'm about to die right now.
Yeah.
I mean, growing up, I think my endometriosis did cause me a lot of issues mentally as well. And I can't remember what year it was, but I know that going through it all, I actually did get diagnosed with depression and anxiety because
Hmm.
obviously, like I said, the mental toll of it all, and it's so hard to go through and then be told that it's also normal when you know yourself, it's like it's not normal,
Yeah.
but you're told it is. Like what you're going to do? You're a young teenager, you're just going to believe what you're being told.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so I really struggled with mental health throughout all of that. I tried multiple different contraceptions and things. Like I went on the pill and I went on the injection as well. And they they was very much they kind of worked for a little bit, as in like
Yeah.
this a little bit, but I remember at the start of taking both of them, I literally bled for maybe like 3 to 4 months straight. I think
Oh
it
my
was like
God.
that. It was horrendous. So eventually, I was obviously suffering. Like I tried the injection first and then the pill, And I'd stayed on both for quite a reasonable amount of time as well. Like I really gave them a good shot.
Yeah.
Then towards the end, before I just came off the pill, I was really struggling with weight gain, and my mental health was really like it's probably the lowest it's ever been. So I decided to come off them and just try and get my body back to somewhat of a natural state, like just a regular cycle, and see how that works. Coming
Yeah.
off that, I think I had the worst period of my entire life. The pain I experienced on that first period was, oh, I thought I was genuinely about to pass away there and then. I was bleeding so heavily. The pain was just, it hit my
Oh,
whole body from head to toe. Everything hurt. It was horrendous. And then that's when, obviously, my periods did get back regular, to be fair, but I then was obviously still struggling with pain, everything. And then I started collapsing with the pain because the pain got that much that my body physically couldn't cope with it. So I was collapsing, I was vomiting, and it was a nightmare. So I went back to the doctors for like for the I was saying that like this is going to be the last time I go. Like they are going to refer me at this appointment. Like I'm not planning on going back again. That was in 2020, and I fought hard for that referral, and they did agree to refer me. I did have a scan first on like the outside of my stomach that said
yeah.
no, everything's fine, everything's normal. So that made it harder, obviously, to fight for the referral, but we got there in
Yeah.
the end. And then COVID hit. So
Yeah.
what was meant to be maybe a 6 to 8 month wait list turned into a 3 year wait list. And
Oh
then I
God.
finally got my first appointment in 2023, like early 2023. And by that point, then I went in and she did like an actual internal examination, as in like with the is it speculum? With a speculum.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, everything looks fine. Like, I can't see any issues or anything." So I said, "Well, I need something. Like, you're gonna have to like, is there no scan you can do, like an internal scan?" So she said, "Okay, yeah." Well, so she sent me for a scan literally there and then, and that came back saying that I had two large cysts on my left ovary and I think a couple small ones on my right ovary.
Okay.
And said, based off the picture that she could see on the screen, it was definitely an endometrioma, obviously, which is known for being a cyst of when you've got endometriosis.
Yeah.
And I knew that that meant that it was a later stage of endometriosis because by this point I'd researched endometriosis because I think I found it online. I thought, I know that this is what I have. So I knew everything about it, which is why I requested that internal scan. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, came back and I wasn't actually expecting to get the diagnosis there and then.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to go in, do some tests, go away, and have to come back for the results. So I was not expecting it at all. So it was a lot to process. And I was obviously on my own as well at that point. So yeah, it was a nightmare. And I still don't like blessing because I still go to appointments now on my own thinking, oh, it's just going to be a regular appointment. And then I get told something, I'm like, oh my God, I'm in floods of tears. I've got to drive home.
Oh.
But yeah, and then since then, I've obviously had two surgeries. One went very badly, one went okay, but still waiting on a third surgery now because my endometriosis seems to be very fast growing, and it's
Yeah.
my bowel, my bladder, potentially my diaphragm. So yeah, but that's where we're at. We're waiting for a third surgery, and I'm also going through some fertility tests and everything like that as well. So yeah, that's the journey.
Yeah. I know. Oh, gosh. Unfortunately, like it's so similar to so many people's journeys, which is just so sad because it shouldn't have to be like so drawn out. But yeah, I don't know. I had a pretty similar kind of journey. Like I now have like suspected POTS. Oh,
When I was first diagnosed with POTS back in 2016, I was, what was I? I was in my teenage years anyway. And the amount of times I'd go in there and be like, "You're too young to be in here." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, tell me about
I
it. I'm
know.
I don't want to be here."
I know. And I've been told, oh, you're too young for like all these things like my whole life. And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm a grandma in a young body because I don't think I'm too young for these things. Like I got my gallbladder removed when I was 15, and that took like months to figure out what was going on. I was having like active gallbladder attacks, which is awful, by the way.
Yeah, I've been
Um,
there.
I was having that plus endo, but I didn't know that I was having endo because, you know. Um, So it was like double stabbing pains, like all over. And then after like months of being in and out of the doctors and the hospitals, like literally like I was going in every single week, like every Monday to get blood tests and to get like pain injections because I was in so much pain. And they couldn't figure out like why. And then finally, like we should just ask them to do like this test. And it was a gallbladder function test. And the doctors were like, we don't do that for people under 50. Like that's not. And she's like, I
Why?
don't care. She's like, do it. Like, we'll pay out of pocket. Just do the test because we've done every other test at this point. And they did it. And I got scheduled for like almost emergency surgery. Like, I got scheduled for surgery like a week later. And I got put on a completely liquid diet. They were like, you can't eat anything. Like, you have to eat everything liquid because my gallbladder was functioning. I think it was functioning at like 3 or 4% or something. Like, was on the verge of like exploding. And they're like, oh yeah, we just don't do that test because she's 15. And I'm like,
Imagine if like you hadn't pushed that test though, because some people
yeah.
wouldn't. Imagine that could have been
Oh yeah,
such
it would have ruptured and I
a
would have had to have emergency surgery, which could have resulted in like a full like open stomach
yeah,
surgery. But thank God it didn't and they caught it. And then I was able to get a laparoscopic because that would have been that would have like changed the my life like completely.
absolutely.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh. But yeah, so I have been told my entire life that I was too young for my diagnosis. And I'm just like, okay. And then the POTS thing, I never even got like back then when I was like actively passing out and having really high heart rates. And they found something wrong with my heart. And even then, they didn't diagnose me with POTS. They were just like, yeah, like we don't really know why. They said I had PTSD on my I have that on my medical records. I've had it on my medical. I had a really traumatic thing happen when I was really young and I like went started therapy really young. So I got diagnosed with PTSD when I was like 4. And I have had it on my medical records and I think that that has destroyed like
Yeah.
what doctors will because they're like, oh, you have PTSD, like you have anxiety, your heart rate at 200 is because you're having like a PTSD moment. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I know when I'm having a panic attack and it's not right now.
That
So,
angers me so much.
yeah.
Like, oh, because I've also been diagnosed with PTSD following a few multiple
Mhm.
different traumatic experiences like throughout my life.
Yeah.
And I've been diagnosed with that. And then obviously I have a diagnosis of anxiety as well.
Yep.
So the amount of times that I was also told, oh, it's just an anxiety attack. It's just your anxiety. Are you feeling
Mhm.
stressed lately? And I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling stressed because I'm in pain. Like I'm
Yes.
struggling with pain.
Yeah, and
But
like doctors couldn't understand. Like I would go to the emergency room because my heart rate was crazy and they'd be like, "Oh, you're having a panic attack." And I'm like, "No, no, like this is not what a panic attack looks like. I know what a panic attack looks like for me and I like am struggling like to catch my like I'm hyperventilating. This I'm talking to you. My heart rate is just crazy. Like this is not a panic attack."
yeah.
Um and then now oh God, like 7 years after, still been dealing with like weird heart rates. Like sometimes I can feel like my heart just like flutter. I'm like, it feels like it's fluttering.
Yeah.
And now finally, my naturopath is like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you have POTS. We can do like the official tests if you want to do them. And I'm like, I don't need like unless you really think I need to do them. She's like, no, I'll just you have it. Like, and I'm like, okay. Even what this is a really weird symptom. But I've talked about it before and people have been like, "Oh, I've gotten that before." I don't know if you have, but I can't just drink like okay, say I wake up in the morning and I go drink like a glass of water. I can't just drink like a straight glass of water. I have to have like electrolytes in it or I have to have like lemon or something because straight water makes me feel like really nauseous. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't do it.
Yeah. And it honestly, even for me, it's not just water for me, it's any kind of food or drink. Usually, in
Hmm.
the morning, I have to let myself come round a little bit. And it's almost like if I drink water as well so early in the morning before anything, I feel like my stomach's like a washing machine. That's how it feels inside. It feels like really
Yeah.
like wishy-washy inside, and it's the worst thing, and it makes me so nauseous. But
Hmm.
it's so weird that you said, do you know, I've never even thought that that could be POTS related, but see,
Yeah.
yeah.
I told my doctor about that and she was like, that is an electrolyte imbalance. Like water should never make you feel nauseous. Like that is an electrolyte imbalance because you need more electrolytes. And I'm like, interesting, which is POTS. But I've also been like chronically dehydrated my whole life. Like I drink water and it actually is not hydrating me. Like I've had to go to the hospital multiple times and get like IVs for like fluids because I'm dehydrated. And then, yeah, and the fact that like I have an electrolyte imbalance and I never was diagnosed with it. My doctors were just
Yeah.
like, she doesn't drink enough water. And I'm like, I do though. Like I do drink water. Like,
You ever find that your body just naturally craves salty foods as well?
mhm.
Because for me, I will put salt on everything. Like
Yeah.
everything has to be salty, and I recently found out the other day that that can also be like your body's natural way of saying you need more salts and
Yep.
things in your body, which obviously pots do.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I
bizarre. I never
actually got
thought of
growing up, I would like put salt on everything and my mom like started taking it away from me. She was like,
that.
This is too much salt." She's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I need it on everything." Like I would put salt on everything, on desserts, like
Yeah.
literally everything. And growing up, she would take it away from me and she'd be like, "You're gonna have like cholesterol problem. Like what the fuck is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Um, but yeah, it's like things that I'm finally, which honestly, like social media had, not that I'm anyone that's listening, I'm not saying like diagnose yourself, but at the same time, if you are finding symptoms that you are relating to that you're not finding diagnosis for, you can take it to your doctor and be like, this, I have these things. And obviously, go talk to a medical professional. Like, don't diagnose yourself. But at the same time, like, you kind of
You just know. That's
sometimes,
why I always say
yeah,
anything that I've not been officially diagnosed, like as of yet, I always say I've got suspected.
yeah.
So even before endo, I was like, I think I've got suspected endometriosis and things like that, because then it's you suspect it, you pretty much know yourself, but you have to
Yeah.
have that official diagnosis. So yeah, but because I mean I'm currently suspected ADHD.
Hmm.
I'm waiting for my assessment still. I'm suspected EDS
Hmm.
because I'm still waiting the genetic testing. I mean, I did get told by the rheumatologist, she did say you have the symptoms of EDS, like we're pretty certain that you have EDS, but we
Yeah.
just need to work out which type because obviously my heart problems, they need to know if it's vascular, classic, or hypermobile. Because I literally scored like the highest points on the whatever test it was that they do for that.
Yeah.
So I feel like the highest test on the highest score on that said, I was like, yeah, you've definitely got something.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
then as well, I'm also suspected PMDD as well. So I
Hmm.
need to speak to my gynecologist about that because I went to my doctor and they're as helpful as ever, but I just pass you off to someone else instead and not actually
Yeah.
helping you. So yeah, but yeah, I say that they're the ones that I'm like suspected in currently. Which like I said, you kind of you said yourself as well, like you know, like you just know, like
Hmm.
if you hit every single symptom, you're thinking, if I
Yeah.
hit every single symptom, then surely that makes sense that you've got that condition.
Yeah.
The same, obviously, when I got diagnosed with BPD earlier on this year, and with that one, I didn't actually know what it was until I had quite intense therapy, and the therapist said, "I think you've got this."
Yeah.
Why I think you've got this, and then she said it. I was kind of like, "Oh, yeah." And then she went through like some of the like the criteria with me for a diagnosis, and I literally could get every single one. Like I hit every single criteria, so I was like, "Oh, right, okay, yeah, that kind of makes."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I went through, so I was suspected BPD, and then obviously I went through the process of having the assessment and things, and then got that formal diagnosis. And it's just every single time I've suspected I have something, I've always ended up having it. So it's almost
Hmm.
like how I just trust my body, I trust myself, and I feel like I'm very much, what's the word, like a lot more knowledgeable on these conditions now through social media. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
yeah, it's don't diagnose yourself, but suspect yourself.
Yeah. But yeah, I 100% agree. I did want to ask you a little bit about BPD. So is is that borderline personality or is that bipolar?
Yeah, it often gets confused and mixed up with bipolar, but I have
Hmm.
borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
Um, so throughout, no one's necessarily, well, as far as I'm aware, obviously there's still research to be done, I think, 'cause I think it's
Hmm.
massively researched, and stigmatized as well. There's very much stereotype
Yeah.
around it, which is annoying. But from what I've experienced anyway, no one's kind of like born with BPD. Obviously, if your parents have had it and things, like there is more of a chance that you will have it, but that's more so because as you're growing up, like you're picking up on their traits, you're picking up
Yeah.
on certain things that they're going through. But no one's technically like born with a gene that obviously gives you BPD. It's more
Right.
so that when you experience traumatic episodes and like traumatic events and experiences throughout your life, as you're growing into an adult, those things almost, I wouldn't say ruin your brain because that sounds really awful, but like part of my brain have been changed forever because of how I process things when I was a kid and the things that I did experience. Um,
Hmm.
a lot of it's always to do with a lot of like abuse and things, which for me wasn't the case at all. For me, it was just, it could be like people passing away in my life suddenly and things like that, but it's just any, and obviously I experienced quite a lot of bullying growing up as well, like quite
Yeah.
physical abuse,
I
being
mean, just
bullied.
however, like your brain
Yeah,
perceives
exactly.
trauma,
Any way
right?
that your brain receives trauma. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, um, but obviously I didn't know what it was at this point until obviously that therapist kind of said, "Oh, by the way, I think you got this."
Hmm.
And it's very it's very difficult to deal with and you do feel very alone in it. And when you research it, this is why I hate the stigmatization around it, if that's even a word. But
Hmm.
because BPD people are known for being like these manipulative monsters, they're known for being abusive and horrible, and that's completely false. Like we
Hmm.
are not manipulative. If anything, I'm more susceptible to being manipulated by other people.
Yeah.
Just because I I attach myself to people so much so that like I have, so basically with BPD you get abandonment issues and like attachment issues.
Yeah.
So if you get close to someone and you deeply love that person, you care about them, like you will do everything to try and avoid them abandoning you. And I think that's obviously because in my past, like I have had people pass away very suddenly, even though I know that they've not abandoned me, they've literally passed away.
Yeah.
My brain's preceded that as like, oh, this person has just left me suddenly. So I grew up very much fearing everyone around me dying in some way or another or leaving me in some way or another. Which then
Oh.
obviously, so I think that's why it's got the stigma of being like manipulative because I won't lie, some people with BPD probably would be a little bit more manipulative and try and stop people from leaving and go to such extremes to stop them from leaving. However, there are different types of BPD. So, like for me,
Yeah.
it's
I
known
f
as, I think it's quiet BPD.
Okay.
So it's more like I internalize those thoughts. I don't really show them. I do show them in some ways, obviously, but for me, like the anger side of it is very much more internalized. So I will say if I'm in an argument with someone, they might look at me and think, oh, like she's really calm. And
Hmm.
inside I will be internally screaming, I will be
Hmm.
crying, throwing up, like everything. But I just don't tend to show it. I think that's because obviously growing up, sometimes it's hard to express my emotions. So that's why now I internalize everything. Like if I'm angry at someone else, I will always find a way to blame myself for it.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's why obviously I take it out on myself, then you tend to punish yourself. But I wouldn't say it's all, I mean, obviously BPD is very hard to deal with, but it's not all bad because when
Yeah.
I feel emotions very intensely, very deeply, that also goes for the opposite way. So, like when you have happy things that happen in your life and you
Mhm.
have love, for example, like those feel absolutely incredible. It's almost like the sad moments are very, very depressive moments, and then the happy
Mhm.
moments are euphoric. So
Yeah.
it's
Like you're just feeling everything very deeply.
yeah, so
Yeah.
deeply. Which obviously is bad because then when you mix that with other things like ADHD and PMDD, like in my example, that can be very, very much a difficult thing to deal with because obviously, like I said, so something can go really bad, and because
Hmm.
of my BPD and the PMDD and things, my brain just goes straight to okay, like we need to unalive
Yeah.
ourselves. Like, I don't want to. I don't
Yeah.
know. say on it. So
No, you're
like
good.
those thoughts kind of can come around, and that can literally be over the most minor thing ever. So
Yeah.
obviously dealing with that is very, very difficult. And obviously you got the impulsivity, which then links in with the ADHD as well. So genuinely,
Mhm.
like those three for me, and especially my anxiety. My anxiety is really bad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really relating to everything you're saying. So
Yeah,
I,
like it's
yeah.
so it's yeah. I think when the anxiety as well, on top of that, it's and the PTSD obviously as well. It just turns into like this big mess,
Hmm.
which is very hard to navigate
Hmm.
through life. Very hard, and especially with BPD as well, you struggle with your own self-image. So for me, I've struggled throughout the majority of my life with actually knowing who I am. Like I know to an extent who I am, but it'll just be things like I'll there's such a thing as called mirroring, if you've heard of
Hmm.
that. So it's like when you mirror someone else's personality. And that can be so my personality can very much change if I'm with different friends or like different groups of friends, different people. And
Hmm.
I tend to, I don't know if it's because obviously throughout my life, I've always wanted to people please. I've always wanted people to like me. So I will act like them in hopes of they will then like me and I'll be accepted by them and I'll make them happy because they'll want to spend time with me. Um,
Hmm.
but then obviously that then you leave and you think, like, does this seem like, is this who I am as a person now? And then you'll go be with
Hmm.
another friend group, you're like, oh no, this is who I am as a person. And it
Hmm.
gets very confusing because when you come home at the end of the day and you're on your own, you're just like, who the hell am I then? Like, who even am I? Am I this person? Am I that person? And it's very, very difficult. And you don't
Yeah.
feel very stable in yourself. Um,
Yeah.
and even it can just be switching up your clothing, even if you go watch a film and you see your main character and you're like, that's who I want to be now, and then you just turn into them. Which obviously for me, say if I was going to watch like a superhero film, I use a walking stick. I'm not going to go flying through the sky. It can be very difficult because then you're like, oh, I'm not acting like this person. I don't feel confident enough to do this. And even if it's just like a confidence thing as well, like you don't feel confident, so then you feel automatically like you're unworthy. And like I said, then it's not just like oh, I'm not very confident, but it's okay. Like I am who I am and I'm still a good person. It's I'm not confident, I can't act like that person, so I am the worst person on earth. And
Oh,
it's very
yeah.
hard. So, and then disassociating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another whole thing that I do struggle with a lot still. But we'll get there. I think that comes in a lot for me with anxiety. So whenever I'm anxious, as a way to protect myself, I dissociate. And for me, that feels like, for people who obviously don't experience that, that feels like my life is some sort of game or like a dream. And like I am not in control of my own actions. I feel like everything's just, I feel like, do you know, like the NPC kind of thing that everyone
Yeah.
goes on? That's
Yeah.
how I feel. Like it's like I'm just sometimes if I'm just walking on the street, for example, and I suddenly start feeling like I am not real right now, I am not a real person, like I'm just in a game or I'm in a dream and I'm going to wake up in a minute and be snapped back to reality.
Yeah.
But it's because you do know, like you know that it's real
Yeah.
because
I can't
everything.
tell you how many times I've like literally like pinched myself. Like,
Yeah,
like I'm like walking around and I'm like, and I like literally am pinching myself. And then I'm like, oh, this hurts. I am awake. But then I'm like, but what if I'm actually not? And I'm just so evolved in my dream that I can do
yeah.
that. And I'm
And it
like,
messes with your mind. Like it literally
yeah,
fucks with your mind so much because you don't know what's real, what's not real. And I mean, some people go into, like for me, usually dissociating like episodes, they tend to last sometimes like a few hours. It's never really more than a few hours.
hmm,
Maybe once or twice when I've been going through something really bad, it's lasted like a day or something like that. But it's not really lasted much longer. But some people can go through it for like years. Like some people can literally be
yeah,
dissociating for years, and that is so scary because it is really hard when you're going through it to know what's real and what's not real. And then obviously those impulses that you try so hard not to act upon, that becomes
hmm,
then harder to not do those things because you think, oh well, if I want to go and spend £1,000 on this thing, like it's not real anyway, like it's fine, I'm just gonna go spend it. But then obviously at
yeah.
some point while going to snap back to reality, you're like, shit, what have I just done?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really
I
hard.
I know I relate to a lot of the things um that you said. I don't know. I feel like I have a lot of problems with I go through it's kind of hard to explain, but I'll like see a career and I'm like, I want to do that. And then I like look at everything that would be needed to do that and I can like only see myself doing that. And then I'm like, oh, but I don't actually like I'm like, I don't know, that's not really like my personality. And then I look at a different one and I'm like, oh, well, I could do that. And then I have like, like my mom, she's like, why can't like just pick something and like
Yeah.
be in that? Like I like why can't you just be like
Mhm.
confident in doing that? And I'm like, because I just
Yeah.
don't know. Like I'd never know what I want. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know. Like I
I
really,
completely relate to that.
yeah.
And I think that was when I was going through my assessment, they did ask me about previous jobs and things. And obviously, I've been a waitress, I've been a retail advisor, I've been
Hmm.
a makeup artist. Like I've been so many different jobs, and like the job that like I was in before, just before I got diagnosed. I don't really speak about it because some people can be funny, but the job I was in then is completely different to everything I've ever done. And it's literally just like I'll watch a TV program, I think, oh, that looks cool. I can do
Hmm.
that. And
Hmm.
then you go through the process and you actually get into it, you're like, oh shit, what have I done? Like this is not
Yeah. Yeah.
um I
I
mean, it
know.
was a while, obviously, and you do kind of go through that thing of like, oh yeah, like this is cool, but yeah, and obviously now, especially with endometriosis, like it was quite an active job. No, there is
Yeah.
no way I could do that job now. But then that leaves me then thinking, okay, like what else could I be? And I mean, I love even from doing social media, I thought I love helping people. I love like trying to resolve problems for people and things like that. So and I did like the personality test online, obviously, and like saw which like kind of career path would
Yeah.
best for me. And I was like, oh my God, I need to be a therapist. Like that's perfect for me. Like I love that. And then you look into it, you're like, oh, okay, so that means I need to go to university for years. And then I was thinking, by the time I've done all this, I'm still gonna be like probably learning in education at
Hmm.
35 years old or something
Hmm.
like. And then also with the ADHD, I'm looking at it thinking that's a lot of work. That's a
Yeah.
lot of paperwork, a lot of exams, a lot of assessments, and my brain cannot do that. So then you're left with the whole question of, okay, where do I go from here again? And it's a constant cycle all the time.
Yeah. I know. I feel like I for a long time part of my problem is I like envisioned my career and my life a certain way and I like worked for that for a long time and it didn't work out. And then
Mm.
I've been like trying to find something that would like fill that. But
Mhm.
now I'm like I don't even like now that I'm not like I imagined my life doing that for so long that now that I'm not doing that, I'm like, oh, I could, like I'm going back and I'm like, well, what did I want to do when I was a kid? Oh, I wanted to be like a fashion designer. I wanted to like do these things and I have all of these like interests and I'm like, could I make a career out of like any of these things? Like, I don't know. And it's just,
Yeah. And it's so hard because I don't know if it's the same in the US, obviously, but for the UK, every like I love social media. Like I that is where my heart has and always will be, I think. But then when you actually look into going down the route of doing social media for a job, like not a sin for like self-employed, but for a company,
yeah,
it's so hard to get into without any qualifications, without any experience. But then
yeah,
it's hard to get those then as well at the same time without getting yourself into a load of debt, which
I
don't really
know.
want to do when you've got like a mortgage to pay for and things. So
Yeah, that's how a lot of the jobs are. Like, it's really frustrating. It's like, oh, this is an entry level job, but you actually need like a
yeah,
year of experience in it for an entry level job. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like,
yeah,
okay.
exactly. Or the
Um,
way too little that I would literally not be able to survive on that wage. So
yeah,
it's
for
yeah,
real.
it's very, very difficult. But yeah, I can completely relate to that. I even now to this day, I still even earlier on today, I was thinking, what am I going to do with my life?
I know, I feel you.
Mm.
Um, to start to wrap up, what are I have like a kind of advice question for you. So, what's something that you wish more people understood about living life with multiple chronic illnesses?
Oh, that's a good one. That we, okay, this got two parts. So the first part is we are not lazy.
Hmm.
When we're resting in bed and we need time to just rest and just chill. Like if we sometimes I'll wake up in the morning, 10 minutes later, I'm going back for another nap. And that doesn't mean
Yeah.
I'm lazy. That means my body is physically struggling to be a human being.
Hmm.
Like the fatigue is next level. And I feel like I just wish people would understand that, because the amount of times I've been called lazy, to the point where now if someone calls me lazy, that is such a trigger for my mental health. And
Yeah.
anyone else usually just be like, oh, like I'm only having a joke. But no, it affects people with chronic illnesses so, so much.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other part of it I've forgotten.
That's okay.
I'll say the other part of it is, oh, I remember it now. The other part of it is that, and this really winds me up. Say when someone who is struggling with multiple chronic illnesses and, for example, they can't work or they can't do certain jobs and things like that, we are not lucky. And it winds me up when people say,
Yeah.
oh, you're lucky you don't have to go to work. No, because when I'm not going to work, I'm not going out with my mates and going shopping and going partying. I'm
Hmm.
stuck in bed in absolute agony, really
Yeah.
struggling with fatigue and nausea and everything like that. Like that's not lucky. Like that's not a way to live.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like that is. I just wish people would understand what it is like, and I just wish people could just swap bodies with me for one day, just so
Hmm.
they could understand the pain that I go through.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's one thing I wish that people would understand, just that we're not lazy and we're not lucky and
Yeah. And
horrible.
most of the
Oh,
time,
okay.
like most of the time, a lot of people, it's not even that. Like for me, I'm stuck in bed because my body won't allow me to get up, but my mind is like, I have so many things I want to do. Like I would much rather be doing things and be
Yeah,
able to, like, I don't want to be laying in my bed, I promise you. There,
yeah,
I mean, I do
exactly.
sometimes, but like rarely, especially with my ADHD, like it's not like my ADHD turns off because my like body is in pain and endo is like, you're in bed today. My brain is still, actually, I'm quite mad at myself because I have so many things, like my list is getting longer because I'm in bed all day now.
Yeah, and
So,
it's that has like it's such a vicious cycle, because I always say like my body's dead but my mind is alive.
yeah.
And obviously then when you lay in bed, and especially like you said, when someone's got ADHD, things can be racing through the head. That list of things that they want to do and the things that they need to get do is getting longer and longer and longer.
Yeah.
And that means that then obviously you're in bed because you're fatigued, your body's struggling, but because you're not actually resting, because you're
Yeah.
constantly thinking, your body's not getting that rest it needs to be able to fight through
Hmm.
that fatigue and like sleep and like get that rest that it needs to be able to
Hmm.
think, okay, let's get up today and actually do something. And
Yeah.
it's so difficult like
It's
to
just
manage that.
this never ending cycle. It's awful.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like it's sometimes you try and push through the fatigue and it only knocks you even worse the
Yeah.
next day.
Yeah.
And I feel like yeah, I wish people would actually understand that. And luckily now, obviously, I've got Jack, my boyfriend, and he's very, very, very understanding. So he knows that sometimes I'm not gonna be able to do the housework one day, and he never makes me feel bad for that. And he always, because he already knows
Oh,
that the days when my fatigue is better, I do as much as I can. I will be running
yeah.
around this house like a mad woman, like trying to get everything done. So he knows that it's not that I don't want to do it; it's just the fact that I genuinely can't. So I'm
Yeah.
lucky I've got him that like he is so supportive, because I know that not everyone have that. And when I get those DMs from people saying, how do I tell my boyfriend that I'm struggling with this, blah, blah, because they make me feel like this. And I'm like, oh, it gets me so
Yeah.
angry.
I know.
Oh, leave
I'm the
them.
same way. Like if my boyfriend gets home from work and like sees me laying in bed at like 4 o'clock, he's like, oh, where's your heating pad? Like this is not,
Yeah,
and he's never like, oh, there's dishes in the sink. Like what happened? I'm like, it's just obviously I'm in pain. So,
yeah,
um,
exactly.
yeah. Where can people find you?
So on Instagram and TikTok,
Hmm.
both under the name of Endometriosis Clo. Yeah, I feel like TikTok's very different to Instagram. It's
Yeah.
Instagram took off, and I feel like Instagram's got like a community feel, but on TikTok I do struggle. I feel like it's not quite got that community feel for me yet, but I'm trying to post more. So if you want to come support me on TikTok,
I feel the same way about TikTok and I feel like I get a lot more like hate and really weird comments on
yeah,
TikTok. Like they just come out of left field and I'm like, what? is happening
Yeah, I
there.
feel like it's because on TikTok, like people can be scrolling through the For You page and it just randomly pop up and they don't know what endometriosis is. They just think it is a bad period. Whereas
Yeah.
on Instagram, usually if your page is coming up on Instagram, it's because they search for it usually. So
Hmm.
maybe
Yeah,
that's the
something.
difference. It's people that don't actually understand on TikTok.
Maybe. But yeah, I'll definitely go follow. I don't think I follow you on TikTok. I'll go follow you. So everyone go follow her on TikTok and Instagram. And I'll put that on the show notes too, so people can just look or click. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was so fun.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've had such a good time.
Yay! That wraps up another episode of the Chronic Chronicles. That was such a fun conversation with Chloe. Her story is such a reminder that living with chronic illness isn't just about managing the physical symptoms, it's also about navigating mental health, relationships, and learning how to advocate for yourself. If Chloe's journey resonated with you, please consider sharing this episode with someone who might need to hear it. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Chronic Chronicles. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Feel free to connect with me on Instagram or reach out through my email. Until next time, take care of yourself and know that you're never alone on this journey.